So this is Kawhi Leonard's very first signature shoe, and there's some details on this shoe that I've never seen before that kind of blow my mind. What's up everybody, I'm Seth Fowler, and today we're doing an initial review of the New Balance Kawhi signature shoe. First off, I want to give a huge thank you to New Balance for sending over a pair of these Kawhis early. I've actually had them for the last couple days and I've been wearing them around and I've been pretty impressed. As you can probably tell from the title, this video is going to be more of an initial review and a design overview than a performance review, and there are a few reasons for that. The first is that I just haven't had the chance to play in this shoe yet, so I really don't know how it performs, and the other reason is that New Balance was only able to send me a size 10 and not my size 9, which means I can't even really give you true fit information. That aside though, New Balance did actually give me the opportunity to sit down with Jonathan Grondin, who's the design director of basketball at New Balance, and he's actually the one that designed this sneaker, so we get some really cool insights on how the sneaker was made and some of the cool design details that we might not have known about otherwise. But I've got to say, as an industrial designer myself and as someone who's actually attempted to design my own sneakers, it was so cool to be able to talk to someone at New Balance who's designed a lot of the sneakers that I wear and that I love. In fact, I was kind of geeking out the whole interview, so I hope I actually got some good interview questions across because it was just like one of those really cool once-in-a-lifetime experiences. It was awesome. Huge thank you to Jonathan for taking the time out of his day to talk with me. It was such an awesome experience and one that I'm going to remember for a long time. But before we dive any deeper into the actual design of this pair of Kawhis themselves, let's talk about how you can actually grab a pair of these for yourself. The New Balance Kawhi 4 Bounce, which is the name of the colorway, releases on August 20th at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on newbalance.com. And I've got to be honest, as a huge Sixers fan, the name 4 Bounce really kind of bums me out because 4 Bounce references the 4 bounces that the ball made before it fell into the hoop and knocked the Sixers out of the playoffs. It was Game 7 against the Raptors, right before the Eastern Conference Finals, and it looked like it was going into overtime, and then Kawhi shoots up this buzzer beater and knocks us out of the playoffs. The Sixers were the only team to take the Raptors to Game 7, and that shot, that was heartbreaking. But I've got to say, if we had to go out anyway, I guess it would be a Game 7 buzzer beater by one of the greatest players of all time, apparently. And as much as it sucked, it is cool to see Kawhi go on to win a championship. So it's bittersweet. But before we actually get to the sneaker itself, let's take a look at the box. The New Balance Kawhi comes in this really nice matte white box with the New Balance logo and Kawhi Leonard's signature in gloss on the top. Around the sides of the box, you've got some gloss texture, which is a pattern that can actually be found on the shoe itself. And in addition to that, you've also got some New Balance basketball logos and some text on the front of the box that says, "Game speaks for itself." The size tag itself is pretty simple and just comes in white, has a size, and says basketball, which I guess is the colorway or saying basketball in a different language. I'm not 100% sure. And then finally, on the bottom of the box lid, you've got some text that says New Balance Kawhi signature. It's interesting that New Balance decided to not go with the numeric naming scheme that a lot of basketball sneaker companies go with. Like you've got the Kobe ones, you've got the Dame ones. They all sort of start with the name of the player and then a number. But with the Kawhi signature shoe, it's just called the Kawhi signature shoe. It reminds me a lot of the way that Apple names some of their computer products. You've got iMac, which isn't called the iMac, it's just iMac. In the same way, this isn't called the Kawhi signature shoe, it's just called Kawhi signature. At least for me, it'll be interesting to see what they do with the second Kawhi signature shoe and whether they call it the Kawhi 2 or whether they just call it something completely different. Also, while I'm on the subject of naming, just to clear some things up if you didn't know, the Omnis is not actually Kawhi's signature shoe, even though he won a championship in this shoe. The Omnis is just New Balance's performance basketball sneaker, and it was the only shoe that they had ready when Kawhi started playing for New Balance, so it's the shoe that he wore. I've said this in the past, but I really do think that this is one of my favorite performance basketball sneaker designs of all time, and it's not so much because of the performance aspects, because I haven't really played in this shoe that much, but I think from a visual point of view, it's just such a clean and interesting sneaker with so many really unique design hits. I think it's just designed very nicely. And like the Kawhi signature, the Omnis is also designed by Jonathan Grondin. The only real difference is that Kawhi had a lot of input on the Kawhi signature and not so much on the Omnis, at least not that I know of. So I think it's fair to say that the Kawhi signature has some large Kawhi-sized shoes to fill. So like I mentioned before, the colorway of this shoe is the 4 Bounce colorway and is obviously the same colorway that released on the first Omnis that released. And apparently, this is a colorway that Kawhi designed himself. And I've got to say, as far as colorways go, you can't really ever go wrong with black, blue, and gold. It's a super clean look. But jumping into to the actual materials of the shoes themselves, around the tip of the toe, you've got this black leather that has this really interesting faux reptile skin texture. One of the things that Jonathan talked about in our interview that really resonated with me was that he was trying to combine classic materials like leathers with more modern materials like meshes and overlays. I really miss the days when performance basketball sneakers were being made of materials like leathers and suedes, and while they might not breathe as well and might not be as performance friendly as newer materials are today, they just looked so much better. And to be honest, that's why the most classic Jordan models and the models that are still being worn today are the 1s through 14s, because those shoes were primarily made of leathers and suedes. And what I really like about the Kawhi signatures is that it combines classic materials like real leathers with the more modern materials like meshes and overlays and knits, so you end up with a shoe that looks great but also performs well. Speaking of more modern materials, as you move up from the leather, you've actually got this reflective overlay that reflects in gold and not silver, which is something you really don't see much of. You can sort of see it in the studio lights, but the best way to see it is to really take a picture of the toe of this shoe with the flash. Moving even farther up in the toe, you've got another fuse overlay layer, and just below that you've got a plastic dipped mesh. The reason that you dip the mesh in plastic is so that it offers more support to the wearer and it's more durable, but it still allows you to have some breathability and it's still pretty flexible. On the lateral side of the shoe, you've got this really nice gold metallic triangular hit, which I think adds a nice pop of color to the side of the shoe. Just at the bottom of the tongue, you've got this metallic gold accent with Kawhi Leonard's number in the center. And then as you move up in the shoe, you've got these black laces that weave through lace eyelets on this plastic dipped mesh. Then underneath the laces, you've got this blue tongue, which is part of the internal booty construction. On this shoe, that means that only the top part of the tongue actually moves and is separate from the rest of the upper. And actually, speaking of the construction, one of my favorite parts of the shoe is the construction, because it's so simple yet so well thought out. Unlike some internal booty construction sneakers where there's like an entire separate shoe underneath the outer layer of the shoe, the part that the tongue is connected to is actually exposed on the midfoot panel of the shoe and around the heel of the shoe. From what I can tell, all of the blue panels on the midfoot of the shoe, including the tongue, are all connected. And the black mesh areas as well as the leather areas on the top of the ankle are almost like a frame that holds this booty in place. Not only that, but this inner booty, I keep calling it booty, I feel like there's a better word for it, but it actually also wraps up around the heel of the sneaker as well. So unlike a lot of other performance shoes where they try and hide the internal construction, New Balance actually puts it on display and makes it a design feature of the shoe, which I absolutely love. Underneath the laces in the center of the tongue, you have this little black print that actually has some of Kawhi Leonard's awards, like his MVPs and his championships. At the top of the tongue, the part that actually moves and articulates, you've got this black, really nicely padded fabric, and in the center of the tongue, you've got this black tag that has a gold Kawhi logo on it. Now, what's special about this colorway in particular is that this exact logo is only used on Kawhi's on-court performance shoes and is not used on any retail models except for the very first Omnis. So apparently this 4-bounce colorway is the only colorway of the Kawhi signature shoe that's actually going to have this exact Kawhi logo. I thought that was a pretty cool detail that was worth mentioning. Another cool detail is actually the inspiration behind the fabric used on the sock liner of the shoe. Apparently this fabric texture is inspired by the interior of a 64 Impala, which I think is so cool. And not only that, but this topmost eyelet, which comes in gold metal, is actually also inspired by a 64 Impala, this time by the taillights. I'm a huge fan of little Easter eggs like that, and I usually miss them, but because I was able to talk to the designer, he was able to explain a lot of them to me, which makes this shoe even more exciting. On a side note, something that I really like about performance shoes having metal eyelets is that metal does a better job of keeping laces in place when you really want to lock down the shoe. If you don't have a metal or plastic eyelet like this, and you just have a punch out through leather or mesh or something like that, the laces won't stay in place, they'll kind of slide back and forth. Moving to the midfoot of the shoe, this blue panel, which I kind of mentioned before, there's this detail that you've probably already noticed, and that's this crazy embroidered black pattern. Now, something that you may never have guessed and something that I know I didn't think of is that this pattern is not just there to be visually appealing, it's actually there for functionality. This very organic looking black embroidered pattern is actually computer generated. The reason the pattern changes from bottom to top is that it actually allows the fabric to flex in certain directions but not in other directions. So what this pattern actually does is provide a really great way of holding the user's foot in place without actually constricting them at all. It's such an interesting and cool functional detail, and while visually I honestly don't love it that much, I think because of what it does, it makes it so much cooler. Then moving up in the shoe towards the top of the ankle, you've got more of that textured black leather. And I know it feels like the Easter eggs on this shoe are endless, but another cool detail is that Kawhi actually really wanted to incorporate his cornrows somewhere on the shoe. And so what Jonathan and Kawhi ended up doing was embossing a cornrow detail on the lateral side of this leather panel. And then moving inside the shoe, you've got that 64 Impala inspired sock liner like I mentioned, and rounding off the inside of the shoe, you've got a black insole with the Kawhi Leonard signature logo printed on the heel. As far as sizing and fit goes, unfortunately, because I do not have my true size, I have a size 10 and I'm actually a size 9, I can't really tell you exactly how this shoe is going to fit when you try them on, but I will say it does feel like how other true to size 10 shoes fit on my feet. So I would assume that this shoe fits true to size, but I really can't tell you for sure. Hopefully in the future I'll get my size in the Kawhi signature shoe and I can give you actual sizing information, but for right now I would just say buy your true size and try it on and return it if it doesn't fit. And of course, if you have the opportunity to try this shoe on first before you buy it, make sure to do that to make sure you're grabbing the right size for you. Then moving around to the top of the heel, you've got Kawhi Leonard signature printed in gold. Then just below that, you've got this really nice glossy blue TPU heel counter. And as you've probably noticed, in the center of the heel counter, you've got this extruded or 3D New Balance logo in black. Moving down on the shoe, you've got this white midsole that comes in fuel cell foam, which is a standard New Balance foam, and they actually used it in the Omnis as well. And then loaded underneath the foam, which you can actually see through this translucent outsole, you've got this really cool Kawhi signature performance plate. And as you can see through the outsole, this plate is made up of two different materials. A black foam in the heel, which provides some nice cushion and some bounce, and this sort of gold plastic in the forefoot, which provides some nice springiness. One thing I made sure to ask Jonathan in the interview was how different the retail model of the shoe would be than the actual PE version of the shoe that Kawhi actually wears. And to my surprise, he actually said that the retail pairs of the shoe are exactly the same as the pairs that Kawhi wears on court, which is not usually the case with other brands. I don't know if that's going to stay true for future models, or maybe if Kawhi will get a special insole as the season goes along, but as of right now, he plays in this exact shoe. And then rounding off the Kawhi signature itself, you've got this semi-translucent icy outsole. Apparently this icy outsole is Kawhi's personal favorite outsole color. I don't know why that is, maybe it's just because it looks cool, but that's what he says. As for the actual design of the traction pattern itself, it's created by something called Reaction to Fusion, which is a computer program which maps out exactly the best place to put certain lines and certain details so the shoe performs as well as it possibly can. So like the midfoot panel of the shoe, the outsole has this really cool, unique, organic traction pattern which I actually really like. The New Balance Kawhi Leonard signature in the 4-bounce colorway is an awesome first signature shoe for Kawhi Leonard. While I don't love the 4-bounce naming personally, I think the shoe looks incredible. I think it's going to be a beast on court, and of course it was really cool to be able to pick the brain of the designer who actually created this shoe. If you would like to grab a pair of the New Balance Kawhi signature 4-bounce colorway, they drop on August 20th at newbalance.com. But now I would love to know your thoughts on Kawhi Leonard's first signature shoe and whether you're planning to grab a pair for yourself. So let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you all in the next one.